Serious, what is your most terrifying we need to leave now random rush of fear you've felt? My car was stolen the very night I moved into my new house in a very good neighborhood. The neighbors had warned us that the neighborhood was being targeted at the time. They mentioned a woman around the corner that opened the door for knockers in the middle of the night, and they attacked her and robbed her and almost killed her. We had reported the car stolen and did the police reports when it happened. Well, 2 nights later in the middle of the night I hear a knock on the door and they said, "Open up, it's the police." Well, since I had heard the story about the other lady, I was suspicious and did not answer. I grabbed my kids and put them in my daughter's room because it had access to the roof from the window. I called the police to say that 2 men claiming to be police are pounding on my door. They said there was no police in the area and they're sending a car. Turns out, these same guys stole the car and came back for seconds. I did get my car back because they brought it with. Years ago my BF owned a truck tire repair company. He stopped by a customer's house unannounced one day to try to get a check, as they owed a lot of money. When he came out of the house he was pretty shaken up. He explained the man's numerous other brothers were there unusual. Everyone was very jittery, but they cut him a check and then rushed him out. He had a scary feeling that day. 2 days later that customer and his brothers were arrested for a murder that they had committed the night before we stopped by.
Hey guys, much like you, I love reading people's stories on Ask Reddit. Unfortunately, there's a lot of weird middle school level, just thought experiment type hypotheticals like "nice try, Baskin Robbins." I don't find this compelling, so that's why I've made it my mission to trawl and crawl through Ask Reddit and find the very best content and put it in your ears. That's why I'm begging you, like and subscribe. If there's anything I can do to help you out, give you the kind of content that you crave to help you get through your workday, let me know in a comment. But please like and subscribe.
When I was hiking in the woods and I saw a baby bear, I slowly turned and walked quickly away from the bear because I'm not getting eaten. I had to drag my friend along with me because he didn't understand why we needed to return the way we came from. Was riding my bike home from a friend's house when I was a young teen, over 20 years ago. We had both lost track of time, so it was dusk when I left. Lived about a mile away. Was traveling down one of the last roads to get home when I had this weird feeling, so I turned around to look back down the road. Saw headlights pass, stop, back up and turn on the road I was on. It was a pretty long road without many houses and no street lights or anything. As soon as they turned I bolted into the woods and hid pretty far in. The car slowly drove by and kept going. No idea what they were doing, but I didn't want anything to do with it. Hurricane Florence a year ago. We planned to ride it out as we were on a hill and in an area where the winds wouldn't be bad. Mostly ignored the news, too. The night before, I got this huge pit of fear in my stomach and begged my dad for us to go stay with my sister a few hours inland. He fought with me about it, but I finally convinced him. We came back a week later to find a tree fallen into our house, the house full of water. A tornado formed in the woods behind the house and pushed the tree up a 45-degree slope into our roof and through our house. Now, I will always trust my gut feeling, no matter how stupid it seems. I was walking in my old local park with my sister. We entered it at about 3 p.m. and were hanging around until at about 9:30 a.m. we saw 3 people all wearing somewhat similar outfits all the way on the other side of the park. I immediately noticed but don't think much of it. We walked for about 2 more minutes and I noticed one of them stopped and was staring at us. I immediately had a bad feeling and told my sister we should leave. She noticed and obliged. Later that night there was word of a stabbing in the park and the suspects were all the people we saw in the group of 3. I was camping with a friend in a backwoods camping area, not very many sites, and they were all super spaced out. We had already been there one night, had the site fully set up, we had been hiking all day, the works. We drove into town to get some food, and when we were driving back to our secluded campsite, we passed a man walking out of the only road to our site. We both locked eyes with him, and I got a super creeped out feeling. He stared at us like he knew us and hated us, but we had never seen him in our lives. When we got to our tent, we went inside, and everything we had in there was tossed. Our bags were dumped out and our clothes were thrown everywhere. We quickly realized both our hunting knives were gone, along with a bunch of our clothes. We also realized it had to be that guy we saw. There were no other sites or hiking paths he could have been walking from besides ours. We jumped in the car and drove back towards where we had seen him. He was gone. We drove a bit further and found a common area where other campers were gathered. We sprinted down and asked, "Have any of you seen this guy?" and described him. The people at the gathering just stared at us and didn't speak, giving us an even more creeped out feeling. It was at that point that I told my friend we need to leave this place right now. Walking back to our car, we looked over the edge of a guardrail and saw all our stolen clothes in the woods. We gathered them up but didn't find either of our knives. Knowing this guy was still out there with those knives and that no one around us cared freaked us out so much, we packed the car up and ended our camping trip early. No way were we staying out in those woods one more night. Was once at summer camp and was walking to the beach. It's like a 5-minute walk from the cabins we were staying in, and the path to get there is made of sand and surrounded by trees. We were supposed to go in partners, but mine dipped. Anyways, I was walking for probably about 2 minutes and I hear leaves crunching in the trees beside me, so I look over and what I see is none other than a brown bear cub lugging a tree. I think that everyone knows that where there's a cub, there's a mama. This bear starts making bear noises. I just about shat my pants and bolted out of there. Thank you for my first silver kind stranger. Never in my October 1st, 2024 of Redditing have I been shown such kindness. I was walking by a long stretch of road with no houses. There was a cemetery. A van with 2 guys in it stopped to ask me if I needed a ride. This was in the late October 2nd, 2024, so it's not like hitchhiking was legal. I'm all. No thanks, I'm nearly home. They wouldn't budge. They kept following me with the windows down, kept saying, "Come on, just get in." At some point they just stop, and they start getting out. I was just a teen, and they were clearly 20-something. I just took off running. I must have sprinted half a mile to get to an alley, and hid by the nearest building near the road. I waited about 15 minutes before moving on to make sure they had given up, so they wouldn't follow me home. I was at a party my freshman year of college and some seedy people were present. The night was getting very tense, but no fights or anything happened. As the night went on, it became very clear to me something was going to happen. I told my friend it was time to leave. No more than 5 minutes after we left, someone was stabbed and the stabber was shot.
I turned 36 this year, and I decided to focus on my physical fitness, so I bought a swim club membership. The only problem was, most of the time when I go swimming, I wind up getting an ear infection. So it turns out that normal earplugs, they kind of irritate your ear canal, they don't really work, they don't keep the water out, but there is an amazing kind of earplug. It's called Mack's Pillow Soft Silicone earplugs that, they feel great, they keep the water out 100%, they're reusable, and they don't irritate your ear canal at all, no issues. If you've ever had a severe ear infection, you don't want to experience that again. It can permanently damage your hearing if you're unlucky. So investing in these earplugs is definitely a good idea. Also, when my baby was crying later this year and I could not get to sleep, I used the same earplugs and they worked great. I was able to sleep right next to a crying baby. So be sure to click my affiliate link and purchase some of these Mack's earplugs today.
Damn, I had a similar experience when I was 14. I was walking home from school when a creepy older guy pulled over his work van, got out, was asking me for directions to a well-known local place, and feigning like he didn't understand what I was saying in an obvious attempt to draw out the conversation. So that alone set off alarm bells in my head, but then he kept looking around the whole time, and I knew he was about to try something. Some lady happened to be walking from her house to her car, so I yelled out, "Hey Mom, can you come here and help give this guy directions?" Surprisingly, the lady actually came over, and as she did, she yelled something like, "Your father and your big brothers will be out in a minute. Are you ready to go?" He looked panicked, quickly got back into his car and took off. Once he left, that lady told me she knew what was up and made sure I was okay before letting me use her phone to call the cops. Turns out I wasn't the only girl he tried to lure abduct. My faith in humanity was both damaged and restored that day. I was at a national park on vacation. The layout was kinda like a crater with a rim you can walk under almost all the way around. Had this major gut feeling of "you're not going down there." Later that day a lady was killed from kids throwing large rock tree branches into the opening state park, not national park. Definitely when my town got hit with the worst firestorm we've ever had in 2017. Thomas Fire, we knew there was a fire somewhere. Maybe another town. We weren't too worried. The power is beginning to go spotty, and the winds are howling outside. Then my roommate gets a call from a friend on the other side of town. "My house is on fire. You guys need to pack a bag." After the call was over, the power went out and stayed out. So we packed our bags, and I start to hear little plinks against the roof, almost like rain. But it isn't rain. It's just ash. Not 15 minutes had gone by, and I look outside. We lived by a large hill only 2 blocks away, and it was burning. It got there so fast. I got back inside and tell my roommates we have to leave right away. This is when our neighbors started wigging out too. We had to then catch our 3 very scared and confused cats. It was so crazy to drive away and see only blackness ahead of you, but in your rearview mirror only flames. Our neighborhood home ended up being spared. However, many of my friends who lived closer to the mountains were not so lucky. Was on a second date with a guy who wanted to stop at his house to grab something and invited me in. He was super hot, but I wasn't feeling comfortable with him for a reason I couldn't put my finger on. We get to his house, and it was just creepy. He was well off, and the house itself was gorgeous, spotless, and totally sterile. Nothing on the walls, every surface empty. No books, no CDs, nothing. I asked how long he'd lived there, and he said 5 years. While he was in the kitchen, he then asked me to go into his room, grab something, keys I think, from the top drawer in his dresser. I got the coldest chill up my spine and immediately stepped closer to the front door. There was no way I was letting him come between me and the exit. He asked me again to go to his room, and I laughed and said, "No dude, I'm hungry, let's go." He asked one more time, visibly annoyed at this point, and I proceeded to pretend that I was a bitchy stupid girl and made a fuss about being hungry and what the hell was taking him so long. He was pissed. So I walked out of his house down the sidewalk and made him follow me. We got to the car, and I kept pretending to be a bitchy clueless chick and demanded he take me home. He did, in cold furious silence. Then, when he stopped the car in front of my place, he grabbed my face to kiss me goodbye. He bit my lip so hard I was bleeding, and he reached under my shirt and twisted my nipple. I luckily got him off me, falling out my door, and ran inside to the sound of him laughing. I ended up with a bruised face and nipple, cut lip, and was scared that he knew where I lived, but I still feel like I survived a legit serial killer. I was driving my friend and I back from a bar on the way to our ebb out in the middle of nowhere, small town NC. At some point early on, a car turns into the road behind us and it's dark and like 2 a.m. so I don't think anything of it. They're also driving super close to me, but I'm not about to speed due to road rage pressure. They chill out on tailgating, and the longer we're on the road, the farther we get from civilization, and it is very unusual for another car to be going out the way we are. So about half a mile from our ebb, I pull off to a side street and let the car pass. Then we wait 5 minutes, turn around to get back on our road, and lo and behold, the car is just sitting there waiting for us. So we noped out, and now I'm flooring it back to town to the bar so we can get to safety. I do a rolling stop through a stop sign, and the car finally turns its cop lights on and pulls me over. Dude has the audacity to ask me why I ran a stop sign, and I just go off on him about how fucking terrifying it is to be stalking two college girls who don't live in this state all the way back on the 25-minute drive home from the bar. I'm literally on the phone with 911 when he pulls us. Cop looks real apologetic and lets us off with a warning for what I don't fucking know, saying that he thought we saw he was a cop and that people usually turn off onto side streets like we did when they're trying to avoid cops and blah blah blah. Dude was definitely trying to trap us into a ticket, and goddamn that shit was fucked. One day I'm coming home from work back to my parents' house because I was 18. I didn't live in the sticks, but definitely in an outlying neighborhood. Along the route home there are several places where many cars turn off as the traffic thins out. I'm noticing that the car directly behind me is following my every turn. Me being a dumb paranoidio, I'm paying attention just in case there's some reason, but also laugh it off because I don't have any influence or piss anyone off, so that's just silly. Until he turns into my neighborhood. I'm like, "Oak, there's still plenty of houses." Makes the next turn with me. The immediate right is my street, a cul-de-sac. I make the turn, and still behind me. Instead of pulling into my driveway, I make the full circle and go back down the street. Hell, maybe it's just my neighbor, or said neighbor has a visitor and it's pure coincidental. At this point, I'm too nervous to look and see woes in the car, but it's definitely an older white male. I make another right, going further into the subdivision within my community. I know there's no exit. There's one or two more streets off to the right, but I don't know where they go. I know the end of the street im onion another cul-de-sac. Still in my rearview mirror. This is the point I knew I was a target, but the neighborhood with its hills and my knowledge of the immediate area was of advantage to me. I gunned it up the hill past my assailant, back to the beginning of the subdivision. I make a right and again put pedal to the metal. If I was to get pulled over at this point, all the better. I make a mad dash for the main road and zigzag into another neighborhood. Go a few streets down and just sit there for about 5 minutes with the loudest heartbeat in my ears I'd ever heard. I have so much running through my mind. Did they know that's where I lived? Do they know I was in front of my own house at one point? Who could this be, and what reason would they have to follow me? After a few minutes, I pulled back out and drove back home, keeping the sharpest eye out for this beige beast. But I never saw it again. To this day, over 10 years later, I have no idea who that was or why they were following me. I still try to make excuses for people I see follow me, but I definitely take it seriously when I'm getting close to where my family is. I currently live in an apartment complex, and if I have someone right behind me, will navigate throughout the lot so they can park first and get out of their car before I go home and park. It definitely got me spooked. It was about 2 a.m. in our apartment on the top floor 3, and we woke up to the fire alarm going off. It was late and we just woke up, and we've kind of been conditioned to feel like fire alarms aren't actually real, and then I saw smoke billowing on from under the door. It was fucking terrifying worrying about what was outside that door, and running down the stairs while it burned our lungs and eyes and we could barely see was an unforgettable, terrifying experience. Late October 2nd, 2024, early October 2nd, 2024 too. I used to hitchhike in the evenings. The walk home was long if I missed the last bus. I usually got a lift of a middle-aged person, or a truck driver when hitching. One night though, some young guys picked me up. I got a weird vibe off them, and they had me sitting in the middle back seat, so I couldn't just jump if things got hairy. They were talking about using party drugs like speed, so I started talking about my drug use and how I was shitting myself that I could have Hep C. A block later they said they were turning off, and this was as close as they could get me to home. I breathed a sigh of relief. was at a rest stop in upstate New York near Troy around midnight. This was before cell phones, and we stopped to use the payphone to find a hotel for the night. On the way back to the car, a couple of random guys approached us from behind asking for directions. I told my wife to get in the car when I noticed two other guys coming towards the car from the opposite direction. I hopped in the car and drove away before anything else happened. Might have just been me being overly cautious, but I swear I avoided a mugging or worse by the skin of my teeth. I live in Dallas, TX. About almost a month ago it was Sunday night and I was doing my typical Uber drives around 9 p.m.-ish. I noticed there's a thunderstorm warning right when I thought about stopping for the night, but it cleared, so I decided to try to stay out till 10. I needed to get cheese, so I walk in Kroger, that's where I was parked. As I'm walking in the door, I hear the tornado sirens go off. Then my phone sounds off with the same watch alert. I run and get the cheese Sicily I know and hurry to head home so I can get safe. It clicked in my head that if the siren went off it was a big deal. And I was terrified. I was speeding home and it seemed that every time I passed a stoplight they were turning off behind me. I get closer to my apartment complex and it's all torn up. Shattered windows, trees down everywhere. But it was so ironic because had I been home I would have been worse than when I was sitting in the Kroger parking lot.
I turned 36 this year and I decided to focus on my physical fitness, so I bought a swim club membership. The only problem was, most of the time when I go swimming, I wind up getting an ear infection. So it turns out that normal earplugs, they kind of irritate your ear canal, they don't really work, they don't keep the water out. But there is an amazing kind of earplug called Mack's Pillow Soft Silicone earplugs that, they feel great, they keep the water out 100%, they're reusable, and they don't irritate your ear canal at all, no issues. If you've ever had a severe ear infection, you don't want to experience that again. It can permanently damage your hearing if you're unlucky. So investing in these earplugs is definitely a good idea. Also, when my baby was crying later this year and I could not get to sleep, I used the same earplugs and they worked great. I was able to sleep right next to a crying baby. So be sure to click my affiliate link and purchase some of these Mack's earplugs today.
I was at a house party and the people hosting were aggressively telling people to have a good time and go to the basement, like with a scary tone and a smile. Most of my friends left right away, and the one person who wanted to stay ended up getting mugged. This happened to me too. A van kept driving slightly in front of me and stopping so I'd have to pass by. Then waited in a car park at the other side of a lane I had to pass down for me to come out the other side. I could see the guy looking about for me from where I was hiding. One time, it was about midnight, probably later, and I went into a supermarket with my boyfriend. It was a 24-hour supermarket. He went into the bathroom, and I decided I'd go too. So I walked down this corridor and turned right into the ladies. I was a bit drunk, so I spent a sec looking at my drunk self in the mirror before picking a cubicle. All the doors were weighted so they stayed shut. But as I was looking, I noticed under the reflection of one of the doors a pair of feet. Male shoes crossed at the ankle, as though sitting in a very relaxed position. They didn't move at all. I was overcome by fear, feeling that someone had been sitting there waiting for an unsuspecting woman to come in. And I said, "Oh fuck no," out loud and literally ran out the door. Being in a bathroom at night and seeing a pair of relaxed opposite-sex feet in one of the stalls as though I'd been chilling there all night strikes fear like I've never experienced. Nephew and I were walking home from getting a pizza at night and he and I just looked at each other and said, "Do you feel that?" in the exact tone, and he and I both looked in the direction we felt it from and got spooked that we both had the same dreadful feeling and decided to run the rest of the way home. He and I have never felt such intense fear. I still think about it and have a feeling someone was watching us, probably looking for an easy target. While in college, I was at a house party. I had gotten pretty drunk and was passed out on the couch. My buddies ran in to wake me and get me out of the house in a hurry. One of the other guys at the party got into a fight with someone, then ran to his car and got a shotgun from the trunk. He started running after the guy who had fought him. I didn't see any of this, but that was the fastest we ever left anywhere.
Hey guys, do you ever have a problem getting to sleep at night? Well, I've got the magic pill to cure your insomnia. Much like you, I used to twist and turn all night. But then I discovered that you can take melatonin and Valerian Root together to get a good night's sleep every single night. I've been taking it every night by for years and years. I've been taking Valerian and melatonin, and this is my life hack to get a good night's sleep and vivid dreams every night. So be sure to click my affiliate links, and I will give you the gift of a good night's sleep.